Why does a simple dinner party leave you feeling like you've run a marathon? Why do you scroll through Instagram and feel this gnawing emptiness, even when surrounded by hundreds of friends? Here's what nobody talks about. We're living through a silent epidemic of social torture. Picture this. You wake up, check your phone, and immediately feel behind. Someone's vacation looks better. Someone's success feels bigger. Someone's happiness seems more real than yours. You haven't even brushed your teeth, and you're already losing a game you never agreed to play. But here's the twisted part. We call this connection. We call this community. Friedrich Nietzsche, writing over a century ago, saw this coming. He warned us about something he called the herd mentality. And today, that herd has gone digital. What if I told you that the exhaustion you feel after social interactions isn't weakness? What if it's actually your authentic self suffocating under layers of performance? What if the very thing we think will save us from loneliness is actually the source of our deepest pain? Stay with me, because what you're about to discover will change how you see every social interaction for the rest of your life. Nietzsche had a brutal term for what most people call being social. He called it herd morality. And before you think this is just some philosopher being dramatic, let me ask you something. When was the last time you posted something on social media without thinking about how others would react? See, Nietzsche understood something terrifying about human nature. We don't just want to belong, we're willing to sacrifice our souls for it. He wrote, "The individual has always had to struggle not to be overwhelmed by the tribe. But here's the kicker. In his time, you could escape the tribe. Today, the tribe follows you everywhere through a glowing rectangle in your pocket. Think about it. You wake up and immediately check what the herd is thinking. You dress according to what the herd finds acceptable. You speak in ways that won't upset the herd. You even think thoughts that align with herd approval. When did you stop being you and start being a reflection of everyone else's expectations?" Nietzsche called this slave morality, living your life based on external validation rather than internal values. But here's what's truly insidious. We've convinced ourselves this is freedom. We call it staying connected, being inclusive, not wanting to hurt anyone's feelings. But what we're really doing is slowly erasing ourselves. The philosopher saw that when we live for others' approval, we become what he called the last man. Comfortable, safe, and completely empty. We avoid conflict, avoid standing out, avoid anything that might make us uncomfortable or unpopular. We choose the warmth of the crowd over the cold truth of authenticity. But here's the question that will haunt you. If you removed every opinion, every expectation, every judgment from others, who would you actually be? What would you actually want? What would you actually stand for? Most people can't answer that question. And that's exactly the problem Nietzsche was warning us about. Nietzsche died in 1900. But if he could see us now, scrolling through our phones at 2 a.m., comparing our behind the scenes to everyone else's highlight reel, he'd probably say, "I told you so." Because what he predicted about herd mentality. Social media turned it into a 24/7 psychological warfare. Here's the terrifying truth. We're living in the first era in human history where the herd never sleeps. Your ancestors could escape social pressure by going home, closing the door, and just being themselves. But you carry the judgment of thousands in your pocket, and it buzzes every few minutes to remind you that you're not enough. Think about this. Every time you post something, you're essentially asking, "Am I acceptable? Do I belong? Please validate my existence." And the algorithm? It's designed to keep you in this cycle of craving approval and fearing rejection. It's like Nietzsche's herd mentality on steroids, cocaine, and Red Bull. But here's what's really messed up. We call this connection. We say we're staying in touch while feeling more isolated than ever. Studies show that people today report feeling lonelier than during the Great Depression. How is that possible when we're more connected than ever before? Because digital connection isn't real connection. It's performance. Every story, every post, every comment is curated, filtered, edited. We're not sharing our lives, we're marketing our lives. And when you're constantly marketing yourself, you forget who you actually are underneath the brand. If you're feeling this tension, if this is hitting close to home, hit that like button, because recognizing this pattern is the first step to breaking free from it. And if you want to dive deeper into how philosophy can help you navigate this digital maze, subscribe to Mind Revelation. We're building a community of people who choose depth over surface, authenticity over approval. Nietzsche warned us about becoming human, all too human, losing ourselves in the crowd. But social media made us something even worse. We became brands trying to sell ourselves to an audience that's too busy selling themselves to actually buy. Let me paint you a picture of your daily torture, and tell me if this sounds familiar. You wake up, grab your phone, and within 30 seconds you feel behind in life. Sarah's promotion, Mike's vacation, Jessica's perfect relationship. Suddenly your own life feels like a rough draft of someone else's masterpiece. This is what Nietzsche would call resentment, that bitter feeling that comes from constantly measuring yourself against others. But here's the twisted part. We've gamified it. We've turned human worth into likes, shares, and follower counts. We've created a world where your value as a person can literally be measured by numbers on a screen. FOMO isn't just fear of missing out. It's the modern manifestation of what Nietzsche called the will to power gone wrong. Instead of creating our own meaning, we're desperately trying to participate in everyone else's. Instead of building our own lives, we're consuming other people's highlight reels and calling it living. But here's where it gets really dark. The exhaustion you feel isn't from being social, it's from being fake. Every conversation where you say what people want to hear instead of what you actually think. Every smile you force when you'd rather be honest about struggling. Every time you pretend to care about things that bore you to death just to fit in. Nietzsche wrote, "The most common lie is that which one lies to himself." And social media has made self-deception an art form. We lie about our happiness, our success, our relationships, our satisfaction, and then we wonder why we feel empty inside. The symptoms are everywhere. Decision paralysis because you're worried about what others will think. Constant comparison that makes your achievements feel worthless. The need to document every experience instead of actually experiencing it. The fear of being alone with your own thoughts because you've forgotten who you are when nobody's watching. You know what's really tragic? We've become so addicted to external validation that we've lost the ability to validate ourselves. We need others to tell us we're funny, smart, attractive, successful, because we've forgotten how to know these things independently. The question is, how long are you willing to live as a shadow of who you could be? Here's where Nietzsche becomes your philosophical lifeline. He had a radical idea that sounds simple, but will terrify most people. Werde, was du bist. Become who you are. Not who your parents want you to be, not who society expects, not who gets the most likes. Become who you actually are. But here's the catch. Most people have no idea who they actually are, because they've spent their entire lives being someone else. Nietzsche called this process self-overcoming, and it's not about self-improvement, it's about self-discovery. It's about peeling away every layer of fake until you find the raw, authentic core that's been suffocating underneath. First, you need to practice what Nietzsche called amor fati, love of fate. Stop fighting your reality and start embracing it. You're not tall enough? Own it. You're not rich enough? Own it. You're weird, awkward, different. Own it completely. Because here's what nobody tells you. Authenticity is magnetic in a world full of copies. Second, develop what he called intellectual honesty. Stop pretending to like things you hate just to fit in. Stop agreeing with opinions that make you feel sick inside. Stop laughing at jokes that aren't funny. Start saying, "I don't know" when you don't know. Start saying, "I disagree" when you disagree. Start being real, even when it's uncomfortable. Third, embrace what Nietzsche called the courage to be disliked. This is the big one. You need to be willing to disappoint people, to be misunderstood, to be judged. Because here's the truth. You can't be authentic and universally liked. It's impossible. Authentic people have edges, opinions, boundaries, and that makes some people uncomfortable. But here's the beautiful paradox. When you stop trying to please everyone, you start attracting the right people. When you stop being everything to everyone, you become something meaningful to someone. When you stop performing happiness and start living authentically, you discover what real contentment feels like. The question isn't whether you're brave enough to be yourself. It's whether you're brave enough to discover who that self actually is. So here we are at the end of this journey, and I need to ask you something. Are you going to close this video and go back to the same patterns that brought you here? Or are you ready to start the most important revolution of your life, the revolution against your own inauthenticity? Nietzsche said, "You must have chaos within you to give birth to a dancing star." Your discomfort with social life isn't a bug, it's a feature. It's your authentic self screaming to be heard above the noise of everyone else's expectations. That pain you feel? It's not weakness. It's your soul rejecting a life that doesn't fit. Here's your challenge for the next 7 days. Practice what I call authentic micro-rebellions. Say no to one social obligation that drains you. Post something real instead of something perfect. Have one conversation where you share what you actually think instead of what you think people want to hear. Spend 1 hour completely alone without any digital distractions. Just you and your thoughts. But here's the warning. This path isn't easy. When you start being authentic, some people will be uncomfortable. Some will try to pull you back into the herd because your authenticity threatens their performance. Some will call you selfish, difficult, or changed. Nietzsche called this the loneliness of the authentic, and it's the price of freedom. But here's what happens when you persist. You stop feeling exhausted after social interactions because you're not performing anymore. You stop scrolling social media looking for validation because you've learned to validate yourself. You stop feeling empty because you're finally living from the inside out instead of the outside in. If you've made it this far, you're already different from most people. You're willing to question, to dig deeper, to face uncomfortable truths. Write authentic in the comments below, not just as a word, but as a commitment to yourself, a declaration that you're done living someone else's life. Remember, in a world full of copies, the most radical thing you can be is yourself. The most rebellious act is authenticity. The greatest revolution starts with one person deciding to stop pretending and start being. Your authentic life is waiting. The only question is, are you brave enough to claim it?